Welcome to this brief tutorial on setting up APA in Word. In this tutorial I'm going to go through the various settings in Word to help you have an APA perfect paper. Now this tutorial is specifically for English 200, but it's going to apply to anyone who's trying to set up an APA paper. Alright, let's talk about some basic settings first. So here we are on our first page. We need to talk about Word and its defaults. A couple of defaults Word has. Usually it is going to be set to Calibri for the font, and it will be set to font size 11. For APA you want a serif font such as Times New Roman, and you want a 12-point font. So make sure that you make those changes right off. Second thing that you will notice with APA or with Word and its defaults is that it is set to 1.15 for its spacing. We want it 2. And then usually it has a space after the paragraphs. And so what will happen is, even though you have it set at double spacing, it will look like it's more than double spacing because of that extra space between after the paragraph. So you want to make sure you turn that off. Now, working with your paper and trying to make sure you have margins set up correctly and know what's going on in your paper, there are a couple other things that would be nice to have going for you. First off, I suggest you turn on your ruler. This will then give you some idea as to how your margins are set up, and it adds a nice feature here. These two triangles here indicate where your first line for your paragraph will start and where all the subsequent lines will start. So right now how it's set up is all lines will be at the margin. When you get down further into a paper, oftentimes it is set up with the top triangle being set at 1/2 inch, which would mean then that the first line's indented, automatically the rest of them aren't. You don't even have to hit tab. Second thing that's good to turn on is your reveal codes, your paragraph mark here. What this does is it turns on the hidden codes, and it allows you to see what keystrokes you're using, such as, it'll indicate tabs, it'll indicate paragraphs or hard returns. These little dots here indicate spaces. So I can look at this paper here right now and see how it's been set up. Notice here it has a hard page break, and that is a very helpful little tool, little setting there. And let me show you in particular where it's helpful. It's really helpful for your references page. My suggestion whenever you do a paper is that aside from the title page, the first thing you do is you do your references page. You get all your references there because you're going to need to be able to refer to them to put in your citations in your paper. Well, what you will notice if you're typing a paper with the references page as your final page, it's going to wind up everywhere. It's going to keep on getting moved down. It'll be in the middle of a page, it'll be half on one page, half on another page, and it can be a little bit frustrating that way. But if you put in a hard page break before your references page, you will ensure that the references page always stays at the top. So if I were to go back up into this paper and add some more text, which pushes the page break down, what you'll notice here is that now your references have been pushed down to the next page, and they are at the top of the page, which is what you want. Okay, get rid of those extra paragraphs. We will deal with references later. Let's get back up to the title page, because this usually presents some problems for students. Notice here we've got our title. This happens to be a 2-line title. Student's name, title of the class, instructor's name, college, and then the date. Then some of this information goes up into your header. Let's talk about setting up this header. So what you need to do is you need to double click in that top margin, and that will put you into the header. And you'll notice that when you do that, all of a sudden this new tab appears at the top, the design tab. And you'll want to go there and want to make sure you've clicked on different first page, because in APA the first page's header is going to be different than the header for all the other pages. So make sure that is clicked. Then you're going to go ahead and type in running head with a capital R, colon, and then in all caps the title of the paper. Now this title happens to be a two-line title, which is something I prefer. You'll note the first line is there in completion, then a colon, and then we get a couple of words for the second line because the title is actually quite long. You only want to include as many words as you can with still leaving some space before the page number. You don't want to push that page number onto the next line. So we just get the first couple words here. And then what you're doing here is you are going to insert page number, and this is where you can add your page number. What you want to do with adding the page number is you want it at the top of the page, and it's plain number 3. Okay. So hit those things and you should be all set up. We double click out, and as we go on to page 2, now you'll notice that running head is no longer there. We just have the title in all caps. Page number is page 2. Now this second page here, the abstract page, is something that will only occur in longer papers unless your instructor wants otherwise. For my class in English 200, this will only be for your last paper. What an abstract is a summary of the argument in your paper. You are going to, in about 100 to 200 words, just summarize your main points and your conclusion so that someone could read this and say, oh, okay, that's what this paper's about. It's not going to have details. It's not going to have citations in it. Doesn't need those things. It is just the bare bones. This is my argument. You'll notice it is not tabbed. It is one paragraph. At the bottom, you put in keywords, and these words would be, they're the key subject words. They're words that if you were to put them into a search in EBSCOhost, and your paper was a part of EBSCO, that you would hope that your paper would get pulled up because these are the topics your paper deals with. All right, on to the next page. So we're here now in page 3. Now your paper starts. You'll notice the title is here at the centered at the very top. It is not in bold. It is not a larger font. The whole paper, Times New Roman 12-point font. And so you just start into the paper, and we can just look through it. Now as the paper goes along, we get through the introduction, and this is a long paper. This is from a previous version of English 200. You will be glad it's a previous version, in that the last paper of that class was supposed to be around a 10-page paper. But as you go through it, you'll start to notice, oh, okay, we've got these citations. And these citations are APA citations. These are ones that were inserted without making any reference to the author or the article, so they're the complete citation. And what they do is they point us to the source. So let's take a look at the references page and how that's set up and how these citations help us. So we get down to our references page. It says references at the top, not bibliography, not works cited, references. What that means is you have referred to these in your paper somehow, either quoted them, summarized information from them, but these are sources for your paper. So the first citation we looked at was Parker, and since these are in alphabetical order like they're supposed to be, and the first line is flush with the margin like it's supposed to be, it's easy to go through here and say, oh, there is Parker. Okay, 2008, that's the right one, and it is indeed a book because they had a page number there. Looks good. And if we wanted to see the other one, that was Ward, 2002, and there it is. Okay, so let's talk about this and how this is set up. Now you'll notice right now at the top of my page here in the ruler, wherever I've last clicked, it is set up so that the first line is indented and the other lines are flush. When we get down into the references, it is exactly the opposite. That's called an hanging indent. And you can set this up a couple ways. One is just by dragging these triangles back and forth and getting them where you want. The other is through your settings. And so you can go ahead and highlight it. Then you're going to paragraph, and you'll notice here in this indentation section that it has a hanging indent set up at 1/2 inch. So that would be another way to do it. It is totally double spaced, and it has certain features of it that are different from MLA and such. And so what you're noticing here, we get the author's last name, we get the initial, we get a date, we get the title of the article, and in the title of the article, only proper nouns are capitalized. The first word in proper nouns. Dumbo here probably should be capitalized. Well, I guess it sort of depends. But something that drives me nuts, but that's how it goes. And then if you have the title of a book or a periodical, so you get the article with only the first word capitalized, and then the periodical is going to have regular capitalization, title capitalization, like this one does right here. Okay, so let's set this up real quickly here for what you're going to be looking at with your first paper. For your first paper, you're going to be examining an essay by Philip Lopate. And this essay does a great job of doing the 2-line title. I didn't mention that. I'll go back and talk about that. Personally, I really prefer the 2-line title. It gives you a lot more direction as to where the paper's going. It tends to be more interesting. The Homer Simpson effect, the misrepresentation of men in the media, we get sort of an eye catcher here, and then the second line gets sort of specific. This is what we're talking about here. For Philip Lopate's article that you will be reading, it is called The Essay, an Exercise in Doubt. Okay, so we get the essay, it's a big picture type thing, and then the second line, an exercise in doubt, gives us some more specifics, and honestly makes it a little more interesting because I don't care to tend to read essays about essays. Okay, so we need to set that up. And how does it get set up? Well, I have it here at the very end. Lopate, P. We'll go ahead and take a look at what we've got here. Okay. Sorry about that. I guess I closed. Oh, here it is. Go to it. All right. So here we are. This is Lopate's essay on the New York Times. We get, or from the New York Times, we get the date right here. We've got the title there. We know where it's from with the New York Times. And then what we will need for our citation is the whole URL. And so if you take a look in your textbook at page 495, look down there at number 25, this tells you how to cite or correctly format the bibliography entry for an article from a periodical on the web. You look through that, it says, okay, you need the URL and the home page. You're going to need as much information as you can get as far as author, date, etc. And so if we go ahead and apply that to the Lopate article, we get Lopate P 2003, February 16, the essay, an exercise in doubt, from the New York Times, retrieved from, and then here's the URL. And then that right there is what you would use most likely in your first essay. So I've already got that set up for you, so there's no reason for you to get that bibliography entry incorrect. Okay, I think I have covered everything that you need here. If there are any questions, of course, feel free to contact me. But this should get you set up for at least some initial success. Please, please, please follow this. It's very specific. It's not that difficult, but this is what we are looking for when we say APA formatted paper. And so you really need to follow this. All right, thanks for listening.